I have prayed, Constantine continued, that you would become the Gael that I wanted you to be. We hate the Saxons, the English. They have raided our lands for centuries, stolen our sheep, our stock, as we have done theirs. I wanted you to be a Gael, but you never were, no matter how angry I got with you, no matter how I treated you. Constantine shook his head, his eyes gazing at her wonder. But, it turns out, you are something else, something better. You Asimeric. You are of the people who held out, even when the Latins, those men of Rome, came to take the land south. They built the wall because they could not defeat us, Gaels in the Western Isles, Picts to the east, Cymric to the west. They stopped at Caeligal, and drove a wall all the way to the eastern sea in a straight line. Bernicia, as you know it, is north of the wall, the true home of the Picts, the true home of my people, my mother's people. Gododine, as you said it. And now, Constantine said to her, his voice still slow and steady, now, you offer a plan, a credible plan. I will speak with Sindlan, Osrith told Constantine. But he shook his head. No, he told her. No, you will not speak to Sindlan on this. He raised a hand, as Osrith was about to protest. It is for kings to discuss, and at a time that is more conducive to a plan. You need Hywel, Osrith told him. It cannot work without the king of the Cymric. Hywel DDA, king of both Deheubarth and Aberfraw and the lands in between, west of Offa's Dyke. And he has just bent the knee to Aethelstan. She took a step towards him, but Constantine raised a hand. Return to Berwick. Go back to your lands. You came to Man because your daughter was to be wed. If she was asked anything about a plot, Osrith knew that was Constantine's meaning. Don't, he added, putting his hand between them. You are the lady of the land, one of my Mormers. You must not. And then Constantine turned, and strode out of the hall. Osrith waited for a long time, wondering what to do next. Wondering where the plan really had come from. From herself, of course. From her mind. But she had never had those thoughts altogether. She had never taken it upon herself to think like this. But she was happy, she thought, her conscience more at ease. The Gaels and the Picts and the Cymric united against Aethelstan was more palatable than siding with Aethelstan with his insatiable hunger for every inch of the land. He would drive them all into the northern seas, if he could, to realize his grandfather's dream. Aethelstan's ambition went further than Alfred's ambition to unite the Saxon lands. He wanted to overlord every land. Yet, not to exterminate the man, the crown of Wessex, was the key. The people in his New England needed him to keep them together. Limit him was the key. But wars did not make politics neater. Wars did not make happen that which made sense. Warmongers could not discern the subtlety. Osrith turned, and began to stride out of Anluf's hall, when a figure appeared in the doorway. The door was closed, and they were alone, Sindlan's face shimmering in the torchlight. My queen, I was told you wished to speak to me. They must not call me queen, Osrith told him, at once. You must not call me queen. Yes, Mike, Sindlan replied, breaking off. It is not so. She declared it is so. He told her. And Sindlan dropped to his knees before her, bowing his head, the grandson of the great King Anarod. She was no worthier than any other descendant. They could have chosen Owain, or Gormeleth, even, Dyfnwel's sister, though she was likely to have died with little Neil Glundube, who had married her out of pity after everything she had been through. But, they had chosen her. Why? Why? Because you are the oldest of our northern kin, Sindlan told her. And he looked strangely at her when Osrith dropped to her own knees, to be on the same level as North Cymric Prince. Aethelstan is strong, she explained. You know this. But you should form an alliance, you, Hywel, Owain, Constantine. You should unite in a strategy to nullify Aethelstan's strength, prevent him from gaining more land. Sindlan bowed his head. You are my queen, and as such, no, I am not, I cannot be, Osrith told him, and took his hands to make the man look at her. And when he did, Osrith realized how alike he was to Owain. His manner, in the other hand, cool logic twined with the spirituality of the oldest Christians, exuded from him. He was, in that sense, his grandfather Angarord. And she could feel a bond, a connection. Cymru was with her. What do you suggest? He did not call her queen. Good. Very good. And Osrith smiled to the prince. Bow to Athelistan, pay tribute, make it seem that you are hunted. Listen to Constantine, and if he talks about a united alliance between Alba, Strathclyde, Gwynedd, Deheubarth, the Norse, or any of those things, listen to him. Unite together all of the old peoples of this land, those here before the Saxons, before the Romans. Queen, and here Sindlin stumbled over her name. For Osrith was the name she had chosen for herself from her father's family, her Anglish family back to Ida the Flame-Bearer. What would she have chosen if she had chosen a Cymric name? Nbulth, perhaps, King Oswy's second wife. Gwyddolf, Osrith confirmed, the same name as she had given to him and his warriors in the crypt at Gloucester Cathedral. Your queen is called Gwyddolf, like her mother. I will not deny you, I will not deny my position in the line of descent of Aryan. She put out a hand to the young man again, no older, she reckoned, than late Deans, no older than young Finan. And I will hear no more of the title queen, she warned him, or I will go to Athelistan myself. Yes, Q. Gwyddolf, Sindlin told her. And being a good young man got to his feet and held out his hands to her, Osrith getting to her feet and nodding in agreement with him. Gwyddolf, Osrith thought. That was Edra now. She supposed that Berwick was far enough away from Man when she found out what Osrith's legacy had really left her. 88,888,888. She looked like Thyra was supposed to have looked, according to the family story, before Kjartan had attacked Ragnar's homestead in retaliation for the taking of the eye of his son Sven for attacking Thyra as a child. Uthed had witnessed it, and had fled, ending up in Alfred's kingdom, with a bruised ego, having tried and failed to intimidate or attack Elfric, their uncle at Bibbenberg, and an even bigger grudge when he had ended up in the service of Alfred at Winchester. Matter, Edra called when she saw Osrith. Did you know about this? No, Osrith admitted. It is to be a Christian wedding, Edra told her. The Norse are going to accept bishops to at least hear the message of God. Because, against all odds, the Danish girl that she was, Edra was more devout than even her father, Bokar, though she wore it lightly, and never seemed to get in her way at all. No, not a Roman Christian one, Osrith thought, for though she was Christian, Edra was of the Irish Church. You look beautiful, she told her, as she dressed in clothes of sea green and blue, as if she had come out of the Irian Sea itself, the water clinging to her. Osrith touched the fabric. It was rich. In fact, the only other time she remembered seeing something so fine was the dress Malmuir had worn when she had married Flancina at Dara. It was Constantine that came to her room to collect her to be delivered to Anlaf. He knocked, but Osrith did not open it immediately. Instead, she took Edra's hands in hers, and closed her eyes. The girl was so shocked that she jumped. So few times she had seen her mother praying. But Osrith said her prayers silently, and she sought for the people she wanted to talk to, in heaven, in her mind. First, her mother, Thyra, praying that what she had done for her daughter had been enough. Second, to her father, Bokar, that Osrith had done the right thing to bring her to Winchester to see him. Third was to God alone, that all would be well, and though she was to become a woman in her own right that day, that Edra would never forget her. Then Osrith opened the door and watched Constantine, who only had eyes for his adopted daughter, offering her the crook of his arm before leading her out and along the passageway. Osrith followed in their wake, and stood at the back entrance of the hall, as Edra was led towards Anlaf. It was then she caught sight, in the congregation, of Finoli, Bishop Findel, Esway's brother. Osrith's heart beat faster as she looked at him, and her mind drifted back to the time, long ago, when she was in Constantine's service, when he and Domnall had fled to their aunt, Malmuir, the queen of the Uineal king, to find Lyath, to Doia, on the north coast of Irian. They had all fought the Norse. Then now there was a tentative alliance, an alliance held together by the mutual distrust and suspicion of the Saxons and the Angles, Athelistan, in other words. She looks beautiful, Esway said to Osrith, crossing to her. "You must be proud today." "I am," Osrith agreed. So when he returned to the congregation as words from Constantine began to fill the hall, Osrith turned her back, instead, and made her way outside. It wasn't because she didn't want it to happen, but she had seen so many weddings and they made her feel uncomfortable. It was a transaction between factions, too, and Osrith did not feel like being spotted by Sindlin and called Queen again. She wouldn't be missed. This was Constantine's and Anlaf's alliance. "You know he loves you," came a voice behind Osrith, as she made her way to the perimeter of the fortress. She turned, and in the evening sun she saw her best friend. "Domhnall!" she exclaimed, and ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "And, what?" "I heard what he told you today," Domhnall went on. "You know that he has always loved you?" Osrith was shocked. Love? He had treated her little better than an object for most of their time together. "And you him?" Domhnall gave her a look, somewhere between disappointment and sadness. "In your way, don't shake your head at me," he told her severely. "He has treated you appallingly sometimes and you always had an excuse." "No," Domhnall told her, as she tried to push past him. "He has always loved you, and has now had to accept that you are not his, never will be his. He takes instruction, religious instruction." He looked at the Norse. "As will they." "What? Why do you think Finoli is here?" "Father Findel?" "The Norse have agreed to hear Christian instruction." "Never." Osrith shook her head. She had heard Edred just say it, but she assumed that it was just for the record, so that Constantine's alliance with Anlaf could be palatable. "Why never, Osrit?" Domhnall seemed angry with her. "Why can you not think that the Norse and the Danes will not become Christianized? It benefits them, now that they have no more land they can take, that they will assimilate and need to trade, and Christians will trade with other Christians no matter their culture, their race." "You talk like Alfred might," Osrith said, and turned her head to Constantine, realizing that, after everything, they were similar. They were shrewd, cunning, strategic, pragmatic. As was Ethelstan. He had eschewed a wife so that his two brothers could inherit the throne after him, so that the accusation of bastardy would not carry on to his children and civil war would arise. He had seen that, with Ethelwald, how pernicious the poison could be. And Constantine had placed Osrith exactly where he wanted her, not in his bed, but in his lands. Lands he knew she had a claim to, lands which were culturally Cymric, like before the English had come. "The little shit thinks," Finan thought, and as Domhnall looked at her, Osrith's heart grew cold. She was a Gale when she was with Gales, and couldn't remember. She felt her eyes narrowing, looking back at the hall, to where she had last seen Constantine, and shook her head. "What?" Domhnall asked her. But Osrith had left the hall and was heading outside. It was darkening now, and the stars were coming out. She strode quickly away, over to the cliff top. "Osrit!" Domhnall called after her, and when he finally caught with her gripped Osrith's forearm so tightly that she cried out. "What?" Osrith demanded to know, trying to struggle free, but Domhnall held her fast. "What?" Domhnall repeated. "You, for a start." She berated him, her guilt driving her words. "How can you ally with these Norse who killed your kin, who killed Donchada, who killed Neil, and Gormlath?" She tried to wrench her arm away, but Domhnall held her by her other, his hand tight. A well-aimed kick, but he was anticipating her move. "What, Domhnall?" she shouted. "You didn't know he loved you?" he asked her, and relaxed his grip. "All this time?" "No," Osrith replied, indignantly. "It's preposterous. I don't love him. We have a bond, always have, since I saved his life. I don't, and I never have, loved him." "What?" "Walk with me," Domhnall told her, then grabbed her arm when she made to turn away from him. "Walk with me." Osrith sighed, and then relented. They got as far as the low-lying land that led to the strand line. The stars glimmered off the flat, summer sea. "He is further away from me now than ever he has been, and we are married," Osrith said, her voice choking. "He goes from my side, honors his oath with my brother." She broke off. "It was that, or allowing the tears to come. Constantine may be clever, thinking he can get my brother to side with him though my husband, but Finan will never leave Utad, who will never leave Bibbenberg, or his oath to Ethelfled. And I will never leave Finan. And in the moonlight, she could see Domhnall smile. He is not the only one who loves you, you know, Domhnall told her. You are closer to me than Eth never was. It is honorable love, kinship love of which I speak. He pulled her close. You are the sister I would have chosen, if I had a choice, and your words, of your marriage promise, makes me prouder still than I could ever believe I could be. Domhnall pulled her to him, and Osrith put her arms around him. He was the brother she might have chosen, if a choice could be had. And you might feel differently if you know who else was at the wedding today, Domhnall told her. Osrith turned, and felt her face break into the widest smile. Her son was standing before her. But before Osrith could run to him, young Finan ran to her. He was taller, much taller than she remembered him to be. I asked leave of Utad to come to my sister's wedding and the Tinwald, then, she will go back to Dunnottar with Domhnall and die, he told her, and I will return to my father, he told his mother. And Osrith recalled Utad saying something about young Finan doing something in Cumbraland with Bishop Oswald. So, this is your kingdom, Mathare? Young Finan asked her. Not any longer, she told him, and explained about the land, and the inheritance through the female line, and how the female line now included Edra. And now Osrith had discovered something else. Constantine was planning to talk to the kings here, then, at the Tinwald. Man was safer than any place, and unless those at the council were to betray one another's trust, this island was the most secure in the world. Whatever Constantine discussed with whoever he discussed it with would never be overheard by spies for Aethelstan, or Hywel, or Owain for that matter. If Constantine had decided that a united front of the old British races was to take place, it would take time for Owain and Hywel to listen. They relied on Aethelstan's defences too heavily to turn. Constantine would have to be clever. He was clever. In the distance, a cry came up. A cry of the post-wedding bed ceremony. The men were being called to find Anlaf, and the women to find Dedra. Young Finan smiled, and scampered away from her. Come on, said Domhnall, beginning to stride after him. Oh, no, Osrith told him. I remember mine only too well, and I will not. But her legs had not been given the message that her head was trying to tell them. And Osrith ran with Domhnall and young Finan back to the hill fort where Anlaf had his hall now, and joined in the hunt for the newlyweds, to unite them for their first night together. Edra would be in safe hands with young Finan. He was a formidable fighter thanks to his father and Utad, but she knew it would hard for him to go back to Finan. Young Finan thought of Constantine as his father. He had lived so long in his company, and he was artistic. He sang, and drew. That was where his real passion lay, and Utad had laughed at him. She had found out, from Bean, who had gone as a trader to Bibbenberg, anonymous to Utad, and witnessed it. Young Finan, Osrith said to her son, when it was all over, and Edra was being carried by her husband into his fortress. Your father will hear that the northern Cymric have called me queen, she told him. But, young Finan began to protest. But, this island is perfectly safe. This island is the safest in the world and Edra will be the safest person in the world. I would not want anything more for your sister, she told him. But he will find out, and if he speaks to you, do not deny it. He will know you are lying, and that is not what I want for you. She broke off, seeing his face. What? She asked him. Nothing, young Finan told her. Bibbenberg, he added. Bibbenberg. Nothing, he repeated. Nothing you want your mother to know, Osrith thought. And he was planning to go back there, and not stay in Alba, so he wanted to go back. She hoped Utad was not being cruel to him. Finan would not let that happen, she was certain. When comes to it, I will tell your father. But our allegiances do not conflict, which is why we are still married, Osrith added, though earlier that evening she might well have sworn that it was their allegiances that were driving them apart from one another. And you, will you come to Alba with us, when Edra returns? Beric is in Alba now, she told him. Unless it was in England. I will come to see you, Osrith promised. For she had thought that she would avoid the place forever. Hadi Ajafu, Ethestan's twin sister, once married to Sigtrager and then disowned by him. been brought to Dunnottar in the plot she had once heard, about Constantine marrying her. But it was Bishop Oswald, in the evening when they had stayed in the inn in Gloucester, who told Osric that the poor girl had died, in a monastery in Wessex. Even if Osric had tried to find her it would be too late, and Edra was married now. So Aethelstan's plan had come to nothing. However, like his grandfather Alfred, with whom she had seen Aethelstan kneel and pray, and have little gifts bestowed on him when Alfred thought no one was looking, King Aethelstan of England wanted to be Rex Titors Britanniae, and Constantine had now just raised the stakes. Aethelstan would never give up. And, a week after arriving back to Berwick, to see the preparations for harvest being made, Finan came home.